All right, good evening, everyone. I want to welcome our families and our staff who are joining us this evening. We're going to go ahead and get started.
Buenas noches a todos.
Before we jump into the meat of the meeting tonight, I want to go ahead and give you a reminder to please take a moment to sign in using the link in the chat. All right. So tonight we're going to be focusing on the academic program for the 21-22 school year. As a district commitment to excellence, we are always improving what we do. So our town hall meeting tonight is specific to parents and what's happening at Kimbark.
Buenas noches. Buenas noches. Bienvenidos a Kimbark, a nuestra junta familiar.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here we have our agenda for tonight's meeting. We have 4 areas that we will be covering tonight. We're going to focus on screening and safety procedures. That'll be in place for our in-person learning. Also, our in-person school program, our virtual learning academy, and then we will provide an opportunity for questions to be answered.
Aquí tenemos la agenda para el día de hoy. Tenemos los procedimientos que vamos a seguir para comenzar el año. Programas para nuestros estudiantes, programas de aprendizaje virtual y por último tendremos preguntas.
For general questions about the content that you will see in this presentation, clarifications, or if you would like to know more about what's being presented, you can use the hand icon that's located at the bottom of your screen, or you can actually raise your hand or type your name in the chat and wait to be called on. And then you can provide a verbal question or a comment. Ms. Rodriguez? Okay. All right. However, we ask that if you have questions that are more personal concerns that you have that are specific to your student or something that contains private information about your scholar, please contact our office at 909-880-9341, or you can text us now during the meeting at 909-491-4266 with questions. Be sure to include your child's name, the grade, to ensure confidentiality. And by texting, it will allow us a number to contact you back if your question is not answered during tonight's meeting. And I will share that it's possible that some of the general questions that you might ask may lead to more personal and confidential information. And given that if that's the case, we will take your name and number and be sure to contact you so that we can address your questions and concerns as is specific to your child. We will try to answer as many questions as we can during tonight's meeting, and any questions that may be confidential that are text or we don't get to it tonight, we will provide a follow-up call with a response within 48 hours of tonight's meeting.
Les agradecemos que cualquier pregunta personal o pregunta específica para su estudiante nos lo dejen saber contactando nuestra oficina al 909-880-6641 o mandándonos un texto al número 909-491-4262. Por favor, incluya su pregunta al nombre de su estudiante de grado, un número para llamarle para atrás. Por favor, si la pregunta no es contestada en esta sección de junta, por favor, denos 48 horas para responderle su pregunta y con mucho gusto le responderemos. Por favor, las preguntas que se hagan esta noche podrán ser generales, no dedicadas nomás a un solo estudiante por cuestiones personales. Muchas gracias.
So per the California Department of Public Health, San Bernardino City Unified School District will be opening in full, which is 5 days a week, with an option for virtual academy. The current legislation in SB 98 will sunset on June 30th, 2021. Therefore, hybrid learning, schooling that's taking place will no longer be an option. Now, if current trends and best practices continues the next school year, we will begin with offering the in-person full instruction to all students, which is the full 5 days per week, with our staffing and our students and families continuing to continue with the required accommodations needed.
Por el Departamento de Salud de California, el Distrito de San Bernardino ha decidido reabrir su escuela 5 días a la semana. También nos está ofreciendo una opción de tener al estudiante virtualmente. Si las cosas continúan como vamos a tener en clases en persona. No se va a dar la opción a tener las combinaciones de persona y en línea.
Okay, so before we get started, I would like to point out that we have the chat feature where you can post questions or post your name in the chat and wait to be called on to share out if you would like to share out verbally. You have a couple of other tools that are in our Zoom meeting that you can access, and I want to make sure that you're aware of the tools that are available. One of the tools is the mute feature, which will turn your mic on and off, and you can unmute to share your question or verbally respond when called upon. However, during the presentation, please be sure to mute your mic to eliminate the background noises. The other icon is the hand feature, and it's located at the bottom of your screen, and it's a feature to allow you to raise your hand and we can call on you that way, or you can raise your hand physically or type your name in the chat. We're going to start with our safety measures that will be in place to ensure that safety of our staff and students as we prepare for reopening Kimbark. Now, the SBCUSD receives, our school district, we receive weekly and sometimes daily updates from our state and county public health officials. We have all adjusted our learning primarily, the primary means of keeping each other safe. And so we're adjusting as the information is provided to us. So we're going to take a moment to direct our attention to the video in regards to our district-wide safety measures.
Tenemos algunas funciones para que usted pueda levantar la mano, usar el mute en su pantalla. Está localizado abajo para cuando tenga que hacer una pregunta. Puede levantar la mano en su cámara para que lo podamos ver. Por favor, mantenga su micrófono en silencio hasta que le llamemos para su pregunta. La escuela, el Distrito Escolar de San Bernardino está recibiendo semanalmente y diariamente nuevos requisitos para reabrir la escuela. Por favor, ténganos un poco de paciencia y vamos a enseñarles un video sobre la seguridad en el distrito para la seguridad de su estudiante y de los trabajadores también. Muchas gracias.
we did want to take a moment to remind you of the safety measures that we discussed in our last town hall meeting, and that will be in place. So our school district receives weekly and sometimes daily updates from our state and county public health officials. I myself am on conference calls with our county Department of Public Health at least 5 times a week, getting routine updates from them and from the state of California. So we have a good handle on the things that are coming. These are some of the basic safety measures that we've all learned as the primary means of keeping each other safe through the pandemic. So what you'll experience is a pre-arrival self-evaluation. We're going to ask that you check your kids before you send them to school. We do that in our household, make sure everybody's feeling well. And if they're not feeling well, report that to the school. We will have pre-entry temperature scanning machines that will also check to see if the child and our staff are wearing their face coverings correctly. Face coverings are still mandatory, so there's been a lot of buzz out there about being vaccinated, not needing to wear it. We know in our environment, as far as education and in buildings and in a working environment, that face coverings are going to stay mandatory for a little while now. There will be exceptions and exemptions if your child or our staff member have a medical accommodation, and we'll work through that individually with you. One of our other guiding principles through COVID is minimizing large groups or mixing of groups. So we're going to try to keep the groups small and together so that we don't have the mixing. And then should a child start exhibiting signs and symptoms of COVID or need to be evaluated, we'll have an isolation area within the school. We'll have staff there that's trained to evaluate them and talk to you as a parent, give you a call, find out what's going on, if it's allergies, if it's asthma, if it's something new, and so that we can work with you to keep your child in school. We're going to be avoiding the sharing of materials, so we're not going to have kids sharing a bunch of stuff. They'll all be assigned their items. The allowing for additional ventilation. So in all of our classrooms, we've placed HEPA air scrubbing units. So this is, in essence, giving us hospital-grade air quality in the classrooms. So this is a huge endeavor. It was a huge step that we took to make sure that the air quality inside the classrooms is at top notch. And then we will have available for use hand sanitizer, and we'll be encouraging the kids to wash their hands more frequently than we did in years past. So we know that tonight's primarily around the upcoming education. So we know that tonight's primarily around the.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Okay, so as mentioned before, there are 2 options for your student during the 21-22 school year. The first option is an in-person option. This is a full day program, in person, 5 days a week. This is what you would consider our traditional school year prior to COVID. The second option would be a virtual option. The Virtual Academy is a virtual school that offers an independent study program. Per SB 98, the law that allowed districts to offer distance learning in the 2021 school year expires June 30th of 2021. Once it expires, Ed Code only allows districts to offer an education virtual through independent studies. A school transfer is needed for students from students' current school into the virtual academy if that's an interest. In order for the students to attend the virtual academy, they will no longer be enrolled in their home school. If a student transfers into the virtual academy and decides this learning option is no longer wanted, they can request a transfer back into the previous school. However, it is not guaranteed that there will be space available at their previously attended school. So to accommodate the variety of needs, the district is offering 3 options of virtual learning. The first option is a K through 8, which is teacher-led virtual program. It will mirror the current distant learning model that your child has experienced this school year. Option 2 is a K-12 online virtual learning, which will offer the digital curriculum and will offer the A through G components for high school. And last but not least is option 3, which is a TK-12 traditional independent study, which requires more parent support and teaching for the younger students and has the least amount of direct instruction from teachers. If you're choosing a virtual option, you will need to make a selection in Aries prior to May 30th. If you do not select, you will automatically be defaulted to attend in-person learning.
Hay dos opciones para su estudiante durante el año escolar 2021-2022. El principal opción es una opción principal. Este es un programa del día completo en persona, 5 días a la semana. Esto es lo que consideramos un año escolar tradicional antes del cierre de COVID, por el COVID. La siguiente opción es una serie virtual como opción. La academia virtual es una escuela virtual que ofrece un programa de estudio independiente. La SB 98, la ley, permite que los distritos ofrezcan educación a distancia durante el año escolar 2020-2021, que se vence el 30 de junio 30. Una vez que expire, el Código de Educación solo permitirá que los distritos ofrezcan una educación virtualmente a través de estudios independientes. Se necesitará una transferencia escolar del estudiante a la academia virtual para que su estudiante pueda asistir a la academia virtual. No estará incluso en la escuela no estará inscrito en la escuela de su origen. Si su estudiante es transferido a la academia virtual y decide que la opción de empezamiento no es para socializar una transferencia de requisito su estudiante. Sin embargo, no se le garantiza su espacio disponible en la escuela anterior. Para adaptar necesitará el distrito ofrece 3 opciones. La opción 1 es un programa virtual por maestro del TK al 8 que modela actualmente como estamos ahorita. La opción 2 es una virtual en línea del grado kindergarten, del kinder al 12, donde ofrece un plan digital con los componentes de la A a la G para la escuela, que sería para los estudiantes de 12, del kinder al 12 sería como la escuela regular. La opción 3 es una opción tradicional de estudios independientes, que sería del TK al 12, que requiere más apoyo de los padres para los estudiantes y solamente sería una pequeña instrucción de los maestros. Si usted elige la opción de virtual, deberá hacer su elección en la página de Parents Portal antes del 31 de mayo.
You're muted. Mrs. Fitz, you're muted.
Thank you. So what we've learned through virtual learning this year is that we need support. We need to ensure that we support our students' emotional learning as well as their academic learning. This will include direct lessons provided by our classroom teachers and our school counselors throughout the school year. So please go ahead and direct your attention to the next video that will share details on how our social emotional health will be taken care of through the classroom.
Lo que hemos aprendido durante este año virtual es que nuestros estudiantes necesitan un apoyo emocional, incluido lecciones directamente por los maestros de la escuela y el consejero escolar. Por favor, ponga atención en el video para obtener más detalles sobre este procedimiento.
The stay-at-home orders and social distancing requirements have been difficult for families, students, and staff.
To address these needs, the district will focus on SEL as it brings many benefits such as a decline in anxiety to improving interpersonal skills and academic performance. To proactively address social, emotional, and mental health needs of staff and students, the district will implement district-wide SEL instruction through Second Step for K-8 and School Connect for 9th through 12th. Provide daily SEL lessons to students attending summer school as they adjust to in-person school. Prepare school counselors to provide small group instruction to support anxiety and depression through coping strategies. Provide mental health therapy through the district HEART team and our partnership with Victor Community Support Services, IEHP Navigators, and Uplift Family Service. Continue to provide staff and community training in youth mental health first aid.
We are committed to meeting student social emotional health needs by providing supports and curriculum to address their social emotional well-being. We will accomplish this by providing a core program for all students. This core program will contain direct instruction lessons that are dedicated to student social emotional learning development. This resource will be provided for all teachers to be utilized inside of the classroom and beyond. Additionally, the climate and culture components will set high expectations and provide high levels of support to ensure students achieve. Schools will utilize proactive, instructive, and restorative classroom practices. For example, we have created lessons that support teachers in conducting community building circles, which allow students to deepen their self-awareness and self-management and expand their social awareness while strengthening relationships with peers and staff. These lessons and instruction will be integrated into the daily lessons and academic conversations. Teachers will provide instructional practices that are inclusive, engaging, and relevant, and provide opportunities for students to practice their social emotional learning skills in a safe and welcoming environment.
Should students need additional SEL supports, counselors are present at every school site to support students with interventions and small group support such as coping strategies for students suffering from anxiety and depression, self-management groups, and attendance support. Students can be identified through data-based decisions and referrals from teachers, family members, and students can also self-refer.
Students who have additional mental health needs will have access to individualized mental health therapy. Beyond the school counselor, all students have access to mental health therapy through the HEART team from the Student Wellness and Support Services Department and through our community-based partners such as Victor Community Support Services and Uplift Family Services. The stay-at-home orders and social distancing.
Sorry.
So, thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. So the social emotional component to learning will help to ensure that we are all working together to give our scholars what they need. And please be advised that this will also be a part of our summer school instruction.
El social and emotional componente va a ser parte de la escuela durante la escuela regular y también va a ser durante la escuela de verano.
I'm sorry, Ms. Fitz, is this the right slide or on this? I may have pressed it. loud.
There we go.
This one?
The next one.
The next
That's
one.
okay.
The stay-at-home orders in
Do that one.
Right there.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. All right. So now we're going to move on to the physical health component to our in-person learning. So for students who will be coming on campus for in-person learning, there are a few things that we would like to cover to ensure safety for scholars and staff. Physical health requires district to develop a COVID safety plan that includes infection prevention measures and supports should a staff member or a student become ill while on campus. This district and site safety plan is in alignment with the California Department of Public Health and the San Bernardino County requirements. Please go ahead and direct your attention to the video for more details on what this will look like on campus.
Para los estudiantes que van a venir a la escuela en persona, hay algunas cosas que tenemos que cubrir para la seguridad de los estudiantes y de nuestro personal. El distrito requiere que háganos un plan para seguridad del COVID, un plan que incluye cómo prevenir una infección o cómo ayudar a un estudiante en la escuela o trabajador que enseñe síntomas de estar enfermo. El distrito estamos haciendo un plan alineado con el Departamento de California para la escuela. Por favor, ponga atención al video para más información.
And supports should staff members.
Sorry about that.
Physical health requires districts to develop a COVID safety plan that includes infection prevention measures and supports should staff members or students become ill while on campus. The district safety plan is in alignment with the California Department of Public Health and the San Bernardino County requirements.
The district prevention protocol include the following. Daily pre-arrival screening questions should be asked before sending students to school. Upon arrival, students, staff, and visitors will complete daily temperature taking. And infection prevention measures include things like mask wearing, hand washing, and physical distancing.
Additionally, all sites will have a COVID liaison. This person will be responsible for daily screenings and temperature checks, contact tracing of COVID infections as needed, COVID testing as needed or required, supervise potentially COVID positive students in isolation rooms. Students that develop symptoms at school will be sent to the health office for support. If they have COVID symptoms, they will be supervised by the COVID liaison, isolated, and sent home as quickly as possible. 6 students should get COVID tested and quarantined at home. Students may return to school when they have no fever for 3 days, the improvement of any respiratory symptoms, and a minimum of 7 days since symptoms started. Physical health requires districts
So in addition, in the case that we have symptomatic scholars, the teacher or the staff member will contact the office so the student can be escorted to the health aid office. That the student needs to go home, the parent will be contacted. The student will wait in the predetermined location area, which is our care room, with supervision while waiting for parents to pick up. But please be advised that the health aid office will take multiple temperature readings to rule out external factors prior to calling the parents.
En caso de que tengamos un estudiante sintomático, los siguientes pasos van a ser tomados. El maestro o persona en comunicación con la oficina le dejará saber a la oficina que tenemos un estudiante con síntomas. De ahí el estudiante sería enviado a la área donde necesita, si es determinado que el estudiante se iría a la casa para contactar a los padres. El estudiante esperará en un lugar apartado con supervisión hasta que los padres lo recojan. La oficina de salud tomará múltiples tomas de temperatura para asegurarnos que no haya factores externos antes de llamar al padre.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rod. We have one more slide before we open the floor to questions based on the information that has been provided thus far. So here we have before and after school programs. Please note that CAPS and Sunrise, the information that I'll be sharing right now will focus on our return to school in August, not summer school. So we are very excited that next year we'll be able to offer before and after school Sunrise and CAPS program. Note that CAPS is preparing for return to in-person learning, or in-person and virtual. CAPS will be providing snacks, academics, recreational and enrichment activities. And CAPS will also operate from dismissal to 6 o'clock p.m. each day. Sunrise program will begin at 7:15 to when school starts. The CAPS and Sunrise applications are currently open, and you can get the application either on our district's website homepage by searching CAPS, or you can click on the link that we will be providing right now in the chat. So again, CAPS before and after school will be based on our return in August, not summer school.
Estamos emocionados de el próximo año tener el programa CAPS en nuestra escuela. El programa será antes y después de la escuela. El CAPS será solamente en el próximo año escolar. No será durante el tiempo de verano. CAPS va a tener clases regulares en persona y virtualmente. El programa de CAPS va a darles comida a los estudiantes, va a tener actividad física, va a tener ayuda con académico. CAPS va a empezar cuando se termine la hora escolar y saldrá a las 6 de la tarde. El programa de Sunrise comenzará a las 7:15 de la mañana hasta el inicio de las clases. Si usted gustaría poner a su estudiante en CAPS, tenemos la opción en el distrito buscándolos por el nombre de CAPS, o también hemos incluido la información en el chat para que pueda usted llenar su aplicación para el siguiente año escolar. No será para el verano, será para el próximo año escolar.
Okay, before we open the floor to questions, I want to take an opportunity to thank Angelica Rodriguez, who's providing our translation. We also have Dr. Sandra Rodriguez, our assistant Sue, supporting us tonight. So we thank you for your attendance. We also have Mr. Rodriguez, who's supporting us with technology. And thank you also to the staff who came out to support and just be present through this process this evening. So we're going to go ahead and open the floor for questions. Remember, if you have a question, you can either use the raised hand icon, you can actually raise your hand, or if it's personal and it pertains confidential information, then we recommend that you text or you contact the school.
Mrs. Fitz, there's a couple of questions in the chat. Did you want me to?
Yes, can you please read them?
Okay.
Mrs. James?
So the first one is, when will parents be notified about bus riders, drop-off, and pickup times? I'm not sure if Jackson, if you're referring to summer school or the new school year.
For summer school.
So as far as summer school, the transportation window just recently closed. So they should be reaching out to you within the next, I would say, 2 weeks. But just to get more clarity, in the chat, I noticed that Dr. Rodriguez provided the transportation contact number. And they can give you more specific details as it relates to your child's pickup area.
Okay, great. Yes, I've seen that number. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then the next question is, will the small group counseling supports outside of the classroom be offered in person or virtually?
Great question. So the support that will be offered through the counselor is pertaining to our return to school in August, and that will be our in-person supports. However, if the student will be in a virtual platform, if they opt to do the virtual learning, then we supports for the students so that they would be able to get connected virtually. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, and the next question is about CAPS. When enrolled in CAPS, is everyday attendance until 6 p.m. required?
That is a great question. Good question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I can kind of answer that question, I think.
Go for it.
I believe in the past, it's kind of expected that you are there every day and that you can, that you stay, maybe not exactly till 6, but I'd say between 5 and 6. I think there's a little bit of wiggle room, but they do have an expectation that you're there every day. And the reason for that is that if you're only dropping your kids off or having your kids stay once or twice a week, you could be filling up a spot for students that might need to be there the whole time. So they do kind of expect you to be there every day, at least till 5. But there's a little bit of flexibility depending on if it's full or if there's extra spots. If that makes any sense.
Thank you, Ms. Yates.
Mm-hmm. Next one, does that answer your question okay? Is that Tiffany?
She says yes, thank you.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I didn't scroll down to the bottom of the chat. Okay, the next question is, if a child comes down with COVID and has to stay home, will they still be able to complete schoolwork and stay on task with their class?
Great question. Yes. We would have to, from that point, I'm sorry, let me ask this question. Are you referring to summer school or August, when we return in August? Well, I can just answer both. So as it relates to summer school, we are on a short time frame, 3 weeks. So if the student is out, we can make accommodations to provide the student a packet during that time that they'll be quarantined. However, when we return to school, the same procedures will be this as before COVID. And then if we have a COVID positive absence, then those absences will be excused in the same manner as any other sickness. Now, if the student gets a severe case of COVID and misses large amounts of school, then we'll be sure to take that into consideration and to ensure we provide those accommodations academically for the student.
And next question is, how will lunch and recess work?
Oh, we're getting there. That's next.
What types of masks will be acceptable?
Masks that cover the nose and the mouth. However, if there are health accommodations that may be needed, we will need the doctor's note, and then we can make accommodations from there. So it will be on a case-by-case situation.
All right, next question. Will parents be notified of positive COVID case in their child's cohort? Will the entire cohort quarantine?
Dr. Rodriguez?
So the nurse or the COVID liaison will be talking with the positive student to determine who that student came into close, prolonged contact. So if, let's say, the student sat in the front and there were probably 3 or 4 kids around that student, those students would likely be called and notified that they may have to quarantine, but not the whole class. Now, if there seems to be additional cases, if it's not just, one, if there's a couple of cases, then they would determine whether that whole class needed to be set in quarantine, including the teacher. And then we would make arrangements for a class to be given online during that time that class is in session. We're really crossing our fingers and hoping and praying that our cases will continue to decline as vaccines are more prevalent. 12 and up are now students who are 12 years old or older are able to get their vaccine, and they've already started trials with 5-year-olds, and so they're anticipating having vaccines for 5+ around September. And that's coming from Loma Linda University.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez.
Next question, how will the schedule for TK look?
Are we referring to summer school or return in August?
Doesn't say.
Regular school. Just returning in August.
Mrs. Yates, can you support us with this question?
I'm pretty sure that they only go a half day. It starts at the same time, 8:45, I believe, and then it will end at 12. I think they're there for lunch from 12 to 12:30. And then they can leave it. They can leave at 12, but if they want to stay for lunch, then they stay till 12:30.
Okay, real quick, is summer school offered to TK?
Only if you were enrolled in TK this year.
Okay. It'll be first year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Yates.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all?
Our face. Nope, they keep coming. Our face shield.
Wait, before you go on about TK again, is transportation offered to them, or I will have to talk to transportation?
Yes, transportation would be contingent upon their location.
Right, because I have 2 other school agers already attending, and they take the bus normally. Would take the bus. So would a TK be able to, since they get out at it earlier?
Yes, they do provide a bus home, but it's at an earlier time.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Yates.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Yates, if there's any questions that pertain to the procedures and protocols of Kimbark as it relates to our return, then we can hold off on those questions until after the next section.
Okay. There's one about masks. You want to hold off on that one?
Yes.
Okay, and then is San Bernardino teaching critical race theory?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is San Bernardino teaching critical race theory?
No, not to my knowledge at this time.
Will we utilize room A6 for the cool-off room? Okay, we're going to talk about that. Who do we speak to regarding TK registration? TK is for students whose birthdays fall between, I believe it's September 2nd and November. Is that correct?
Yes.
So yeah, you would just register them the same way you would register a kindergartner. Christina might be able to speak on that a little bit. I don't know if they go to the school or if they go to the district.
During proper times, it was always, or they could then start to come into us.
Okay, so they can just get a hold of you.
Oh, the office.
Call the office.
For an enrollment packet and stuff.
Thank you, Christina. All right. Are we able to move on, Ms. Yates?
Yep, that was it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
All right. So now we're getting to the meat of what it's going to look like for Kimbark. So some of the signage and the tools that you'll see around campus will consist of screen station check-ins, as well as the symptoms that you want to be aware of as they apply to you or your scholar. So students will arrive no earlier than 8:30. And I'm sorry, this in particular, students arriving at 8:30 is due specifically to summer school. Everything else will pertain to summer school and our return in August. Students being dropped off will walk in. I'm sorry, students who will be dropped off or who will be walking will be screened at the top of the main entrance at the top of the staircase. Students who will ride the bus will be escorted and screened in at the cafeteria entrance. Now, once students enter the school, they will go directly to their classrooms to eat breakfast. Please be advised that if we get a high temperature rating, we will have students in a temperature cooling area available for scholars, and then we will take their temperature multiple times to ensure an accurate reading before we contact families.
Los estudiantes deberán no llegar más temprano de las 8:30. Esto es para la escuela de verano, solamente para la escuela de verano. Lo que sigue será escuela de verano y la escuela regular del próximo año escolar. Los estudiantes que lleguen caminando o que los dejen los padres, la temperatura se le va a tomar a la entrada de los escalones que está en la entrada principal. Para los estudiantes que usan el autobús, los estudiantes serán caminados a la área de tomar temperatura en la entrada de la cafetería. Los estudiantes que se encuentran en la escuela después serán enviados a sus clases para tomar el desayuno. Si hay un estudiante que tiene síntomas o tiene temperatura, será enviado al cuarto de espera para seguirle tomando temperaturas múltiplemente tomarle temperaturas antes de contactar a los padres.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. So scholars who are walkers and who are being dropped off will enter campus through the main gate entrance at the top of the staircase. Students will be screened in for temperature as they enter the gate. So the very first picture you see on the left side is the main gate entrance, and this is for our drop-offs and our walkers. Scholars who will take the bus will be dropped off in the bus area located on the east side of campus. Please note that this drop-off area is for bus riders only.
Los estudiantes llegarán por la mañana. Los dejarían en la área de la escalera principal, como pueden ver a su mano izquierda. Eso es para dejar a los niños, a los que caminan y a los que dejan sus padres. Para los autobuses, será en la área de los autobuses. Esa área solamente es para los estudiantes que usen el autobús. Solamente se le permitirá entrar a los estudiantes que usen el autobús para tomar su temperatura. y derivarlos a la área correcta.
Again, we will have 2 entry points for scholars. We'll have our bus area located again on the east side of campus. Mr. Santos, can you point your arrow in that?
Yes.
There you go. Thank you. So we have our bus drop off and pick up in this area. And again, this is for bus riders only. And then we have our main gate up top. During the morning drop off, parking in front of the campus will not be available. So Mr. Santos, would you mind pointing to that section? So where you see the blue circles is where students will enter campus. We will have a drive-through to allow for students to be dropped off, and parents or guardians will not need to get out of their cars. So looking at the direction of the arrows, you will come in to our coned off drive-through, which will allow you to drop your scholar off and then exit and move back into the flow of traffic. We will be providing supervision up top to ensure safety and direction for scholars as they are being dropped off or enter the gates.
Va a haber 2 puntos de entrada en la mañana. Mr. Santos, ¿puede enseñar lo del autobús, por favor? Esa es la entrada del autobús. Solamente los estudiantes que agarran el autobús van a poder entrar por esa área. Esa es la área de donde van a agarrar el autobús y donde el autobús los deja. Mr. Santos, can you go to the main entrance, please? La área donde está circulando la flechita es la área principal. Ahí los estudiantes que caminan y los estudiantes que los padres los van a dejar en su carro van a poder entrar. Vamos a tener supervisión en esa área. Los padres vamos a tener la área de sus parqueaderos bloqueados para que sea una área donde entren los carros para dejar a sus estudiantes. Los padres no se van a bajar de los automóviles. Los estudiantes se van a bajar, les vamos a tomar temperatura y van a seguir los padres continuando con su camino. Muchas gracias.
Okay, here we have transportation. So here we have the transportation overview. So transportation will be provided for scholars who qualify. Please note that nationwide, there's a bus driver shortage, which leads to limited fleet of buses and drivers. Minimizing capacity as the best possible is the focus during this time. The safety precautions that will take place to ensure safety with students being transported from home to school. There will be a COVID screening at home that must be provided before students arrive to the bus stop. All students are to wear a face covering that covers the nose and the mouth. Should a student show up without a face covering, the driver will have disposables on hand. If weather permits, windows will be lowered for ventilation. Buses will be sanitized after each group of riders have been unloaded. And we are planning for 1 rider per seat, depending on the amount of buses and drivers, keeping in mind that there is a nationwide driver shortage. But we are keeping safety in the forefront.
There was a question in the chat about whether face shields are acceptable for the kids, or does it have to be a mask?
It must be a mask covering the face and nose unless there's a health concern that the parent may have. And once they provide a doctor's note saying that it's not feasible for the scholar, then we will make accommodations for that scholar.
La transportación será para los estudiantes que califiquen. para calificar para el autobús. Tenemos ahorita un límite en los choferes y autobuses para magnificar la capacidad de lo posible. Por los siguientes, en la casa hay que hacer una detección de síntomas del COVID antes de mandar a sus estudiantes a abordar el autobús. Los estudiantes tienen que usar una mascarilla que cubra su nariz y su boca. Las ventanas van a estar abiertas cuando el clima lo permita. Los bases van a ser desinfectados con cada servicio. Vamos a tener un estudiante por asiento.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Next, we have breakfast and lunch procedures. We will be serving breakfast and lunch on campus for in-person learning. Upon arrival, students are to report directly to their classrooms. Breakfast and lunch will be delivered to the classrooms and students will eat there. Physical distancing will take place during breakfast and lunch. Face covering will be required before and after eating.
A su llegada, los estudiantes se reportarán a sus clases donde se les servirá el desayuno. El desayuno y almuerzo serán entregadas en la clase. Los estudiantes tienen que usar su cubrebocas antes y después de comer y mantener la distancia social entre ellos y los estudiantes.
Next, we have recess and transitioning procedures. Know that class cohorts will have recess breaks and lunch recess together. Class cohorts will have separate areas to play and will rotate each day. Each class cohort will have equipment that they are able to play with that will be sanitized at the end of each day. Note that there will be a staggered recess time. Only 2 classes at a time will be out for recess. Each class will have a designated area for recess and will not mix with other classes. Face coverings will be worn at that time. And our playground equipment will not be accessible during recess and lunch. And when we're referencing the playground equipment, we're talking about the apparatus, the slides, and the jungle gym.
Los recreos, los tiempos de recreo serán separados por grupos. Solamente 2 clases estarán en recreo a la vez. Las áreas serán designadas para el recreo y las mascarillas necesitan usarse durante el día, todo el día. El equipo va a ser desinfectado todos los días. Los equipos que tenemos en la escuela para jugar para los niños que están ahí ahorita, como el Jungle Gym, no se podrá usar, estará cerrado.
Next, we have classroom material procedures. Inside of the classroom, we have purchased materials for our scholars to keep them organized and separate from each other. Kimbark will provide all materials needed for school, and then materials will not be shared. Staff will place scholars' materials in individual cases on their desks within the classrooms. Scholars will be allowed to bring their backpacks, which will be housed on the back of their chairs throughout the day. This will allow for them to be easily accessible and confined to the scholar's personal space.
Los materiales en la clase. Los materiales en la clase se los vamos a prohibir. Vamos a darle los materiales que ocupen para sus clases en la escuela. Los estudiantes no podrán compartir materiales. Las personas que traigan mochilas a la escuela se les permitirá traer las mochilas. Lo único es que tienen que ponerlos atrás de su silla y mantenerse ahí durante el tiempo de clases.
Next, we have restroom and hand washing procedures. Restrooms will be monitored by staff during recess, arrival, and dismissal. During the school day, 2 class cohorts will be assigned to each of the 4 restroom locations. Support staff will be assigned to each classroom, will help monitor restroom locations assigned to their cohort during the school day as needed. In addition, there will be a limited number of students who will be allowed in the restrooms at any given time.
Los baños van a ser asignados por grados estudiantiles. Tenemos 4 baños, tenemos 4 áreas de baños en la escuela y será asignados diferentes grados en esos baños. Y vamos a tener un empleado o empleada ayudando a monitorear los baños para los diferentes grados. Los baños van a ser limitados, el límite de estudiantes permitidos por el baño a la vez.
Here are our hand washing procedures that will be reiterated throughout the day as a reminder for our scholars. Key times to wash hands will be before and after eating food, before and after recess, after using the restrooms, after blowing their nose, coughing, or sneezing, after touching the garbage cans, before and after treating a cut or a wound, and after yes. Sorry. In addition, we will also be sharing the hand washing procedures throughout the campus as reminders for our scholars as well. How it's important for them to wet their hands when cleaning, running water, make sure it's warm, turn off the tap as they're applying soap, lathering their hands, rubbing them together with the soap, scrubbing their hands back and forth for at least 20 seconds, rinsing their hands thoroughly, and then drying their hands before exiting the restroom area. In addition, we will have hand washing stations located in specific areas on campus to allow students to wash their hands periodically throughout the day, not only when they're in the restroom.
El procedimiento de los baños y lavado de manos. Para lavarnos las manos sería antes y después de comer, sería antes y después del recreo, sería después de usar el baño, después de destornudar o toser, después de tocar basura, antes y después de una cortadura, después está agregado después de cambiar un pañal o limpiar a un estudiante. Para lavarnos las manos es siguiente el procedimiento. Mójese las manos, después después aplique el jabón, lávese las manos con agua calientita o al tiempo por 20 minutos. Por 20 minutos, si ocupa, por 20 segundos, por 20 segundos, si ocupa tomar tiempo, cante la canción de Feliz Cumpleaños 2 veces. Y pase las manos por agua limpia. Tendremos tenemos toallas y secadoras de aire. También tenemos diferentes lugares, tenemos más opciones para lavarnos las manos en diferentes áreas, no nomás cuando usamos el baño.
Next, we have common areas and the procedures required. So please be advised that staggered times for passing in the hallways will be structured for each classroom, which will typically take place during recess and lunch. PBIS skills and expectations will be posted by location as reminders for our scholars. We will practice social distancing when walking through our common areas. Students and staff will model mask wearing, hand washing, hand sanitizing, utilizing the sanitizing stations that will be located within each classroom and throughout the campus, and also recess expectations.
Los tiempos, las áreas en comunes en la escuela tendrán tiempos separados para poder pasar por los pasillos. También tenemos las habilidades del PBIS que van a estar puestas en diferentes ubicaciones. Practicamos la distancia social caminando por las áreas comunes. Los estudiantes y personas y trabajadores van a modelar cómo se usan las manos, cómo se usan las máscaras, lavarnos las manos, desinfectarnos las manos y el recreo y más.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Next, we have our dismissal procedures. This one is an extremely important one for our families to ensure that they're aware of where to go to pick up their scholars after school is dismissed. So at dismissal, we have designated the following pickup locations. Class cohorts will be escorted to their designated pickup spots. TK and Kinder will be dismissed using the handicap ramp on the east gate. First through second will use the top entrance through the main staircase. And then third through fifth grade will exit through the gate staircase on the west side of campus. Class cohorts will be escorted to the bus and loaded by their bus colors, maintaining 3 feet distance.
El siguiente procedimiento es el procedimiento para la salida. Los estudiantes van a tener diferentes salidas, 3 diferentes salidas. El TK y Kinder va a salir por la puerta donde está el patio de juegos del Kinder. El primero a segundo grado va a salir por la área principal de la escuela donde está localizada la oficina. El tercero a quinto grado será la salida por el oeste. Las clases que tomarán el autobús se van a subir al autobús por colores, manteniendo los 3 pies de distancia.
Here we have a visual to provide more clarity. So the picture on the left is the exit and pickup for TK through Kinder. This gate is located by the Kinder parking lot right next to the marquee. The picture on the right is the exit and pickup for first through second grade. These scholars will be dismissed through the main gate. Scholars who have siblings can connect at the upper platform while waiting for parents or guardians to pick them up or before walking home.
Aquí tenemos una aclaración para ver dónde vamos a recoger a sus estudiantes. El TK va a ser la foto que está en la mano izquierda. Los grados 1 y 2 van a salir por la entrada principal como está modelada en la mano derecha. Los estudiantes que tengan hermanos pueden estar esperando a sus hermanos o hermanas arriba en la plataforma o a sus padres o tutores para caminar juntos a sus casas.
Here we have our 3rd through 5th graders, scholars, and their dismissal location. So they will be dismissed on the west gate, which is to the, if you're looking at the campus, it's the gate to the right of the main entrance. Our east gate's parking lot, which is the picture on the right, is for our buses only. Please note that we are not dropping off scholars in this designated area to ensure safety.
Los estudiantes del grado 3 al 5 van a salir por la puerta oeste como está en el retrato. Para tener una mejor claridad, es la puerta que está localizada a la derecha de la puerta principal de la oficina. Para los estudiantes que usan el autobús, el retrato está a la derecha. Por favor, no hay que bajar a nuestros estudiantes en esa área por la seguridad de los estudiantes o recoger a los estudiantes en esa área. No van a estar permitidos para que los recojan o los dejen. Es por seguridad de su estudiante.
And then here's another visual to help clarify locations. So on the east side of the campus, again, this is where the bus area is located, where you see the blue circle. And then when we're looking up top, we have our TK area next to the marquee by the kinder playground, is where the TK through kinder scholars will be dismissed. Then we have the main entrance that leads into the campus. Up the staircase, this is where our 1st through 2nd graders will be dismissed. And then the gate to the right of that is where our 3rd through 5th graders will be dismissed.
Aquí está otra foto para enseñarles dónde van a estar disponibles las entregas de los estudiantes. La entrega de los autobuses va a ser en la área que está circulando ahorita la flechita. Solamente los estudiantes que van en el autobús pueden estar en esa área. La siguiente área va a ser el TK Kinder, que va a ser por la área donde está la área de juegos del Kinder. La área para 1º y 2º grado será la área principal, la entrada principal a la escuela. De ahí sigue la área para el 3º y 5º grado, que sería la área al lado derecho del área principal para esos grados.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Next, we have visitors or volunteers. We strongly encourage to respect the guidelines regarding the physical distancing and large gatherings, which requires us to limit the number of it requires us to limit the amount of guests that we have as it relates to our protocols for COVID in one location. It is also required to use the masks, ensure that we have masks while on school campus and when interacting with school personnel. And at this time, volunteers will not be permitted due to our current circumstance. Families will be able to make appointments to come in or contact the school via phone to discuss any questions or concerns. We will also have one of our office staff located at the top of the ramp daily during our summer school to take note or to make appointments or to answer any questions that some families may have as they're dropping off scholars in the morning.
Voluntarios y visitantes en la escuela. Serán admitidos por la puerta sobre la distancia. Serán limitados por el grupo que tenemos. No podemos juntarnos muchas personas a la vez. Por esto va a ser limitado la congregación de personas en la escuela por ser el límite por ser el número. No podemos tener muchas personas en la escuela. En este momento no podemos recibir a personas en la escuela. Si usted nos visita, por favor, use los materiales indicados como el cubrebocas. En este momento no se permitirán voluntarios en la escuela. Si usted tiene preguntas o quisiera hacer una cita para hablar con la principal o con alguien en la oficina, vamos a tener una persona en la mañana arriba, junto a la entrada principal, que va a poder tomar sus preguntas, hacerle una cita, contestar preguntas y comunicarse con la escuela. También tenemos la opción de hacer preguntas por el teléfono o tener una cita.
And this will be our last slide before we get to feedback and questions. So as it relates to vaccinations, we know that the decision to get vaccinated is a personal one. At this time, there is no legal requirements for students or school staff members to be vaccinated. The SBC USD will not ask individuals for this information. Anyone wishing to receive the COVID-19 vaccination is encouraged to sign up and register at the link provided in the chat.
Esta es la última cosa que tenemos que discutir antes de abrir la sección a más preguntas. Sabemos que la decisión de vacunarnos, de ponernos la vacuna contra el COVID es personal. En este momento no es un requisito que los alumnos o los empleados de la escuela tengan la vacuna. Y el Distrito Escolar de San Bernardino no va a pedir esa información a sus empleados o estudiantes. Si usted quiere recibir la vacuna, por favor, inscríbase en la siguiente página para recibir su vacuna o la ocasión donde puede recibir su vacuna. Gracias.
So before we get to the questions, we want to be sure to provide you with a feedback link. I can honestly say that we, as a district, are really good at getting better. However, we can't do it without you. So please know that your feedback is critical to our processes. And we would truly appreciate any feedback that you can give us. So in the chat, we will provide the feedback link.
En el Distrito Escolar de San Bernardino siempre estamos tratando de mejorar. Nosotros nos gustaría escuchar ustedes cómo fue su experiencia en esta junta. Vamos a poner un enlace en el chat para que usted pueda darnos su información sobre la junta o comentarios.
And now we're going to open the floor for questions. I know that was a whole lot of information, but we wanted to ensure that we provide you with what's necessary as we prepare for our kids coming back on campus.
Okay, we have quite a few questions in the chat. The first one is, for the emotional and social health studies, what is being removed or condensed to fit this into the curriculum? And is there an outline of what exactly is being covered?
That is a great question. Maybe Dr. Rodriguez could support us with this. But what I will share is for summer school, it will be a modified lesson, which will allow 15 to 20 minutes every day for the instructional facilitator, which is the teacher, to touch base on this to provide supports for our scholars. And then within the school day, because we will have a longer school day, we will have more time to extend our lessons during that time. Dr. Rodriguez?
Sure. So social emotional learning isn't just like a curriculum. It's a way that we do business in the classroom. So it's about helping kids understand how to deal with stresses, how to resolve conflict. And so it's something that's embedded in the classroom. So the very first week of school, there's going to be a lot of training of kids about procedures and routines. How do we talk with one another? How do we respond when someone doesn't like our point of view? And so those are some things around social emotional learning, as well as what do you do when you don't understand something? Do you give up? Kind of those coping strategies. So that very first week of school, it's going to be very heavy on policy or procedures, routines, rules, socialization. How do we get along? Building community in that classroom. So that's something that we normally do, but we're doing it a little heavier at the beginning of the year because kids have been out of school for so long. Recently, we purchased a digital curriculum, and I can't remember the name of it right now, where there are lessons where, what's that?
Second step?
Second step, there you go. And so it allows teachers to kind of pick and choose things for them to be able to use in the classroom. And it could be, how do you build resilience? How do you build stamina? How do you not give up? So that's kind of what the social emotional pieces are. And it's not like we're going to spend days and days and days on it, but it's going to be just a way that we do business so that when kids face, some type of adversity, they know they have some strategies on how to deal with that. So we don't necessarily believe it's going to take away anything from the academics, but really it's kind of that safety net of strategies so that when they do face something that they don't understand or they have some anxiety, they know how to regulate and kind of just continue to work through some of their concerns. So we don't anticipate there's going to be anything left out. It's just really just kind of how we do business. So I'm not sure if that totally answered your question. Like what's coming out, nothing's really coming out. We're just trying to make it better.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. Ms. Yates?
Okay, next question is, will the information from this PowerPoint be available after this meeting? Mr. Santos did answer that and say that yes, we will be posting this a recording of this presentation on Facebook. Mr. Rodriguez?
On all of our social media platforms.
Okay. Next question for Kinder. Will they still have to have their masks on while sitting at their desk behind the plexiglass dividers?
Good question. Yes, scholars will be expected to remain with their mask on. In the classroom, there will not be the plexiglass dividers at the scholar's desk. So it will be an expectation for them to ensure that they have a mask that covers their nose and mouth.
Okay, next question. I have heard that other principals are telling parents that the entire class will be notified of a positive case in their class, but we were just told only students in close, prolonged contact will receive notice. Why is it different depending on the school? Will service providers, example speech, RSP, psychologists, counselors, etc., also be notified if one of their students tests positive? We all hope we won't have positive cases, but we'd like a solid district-wide plan if possible.
So I'll respond to that, Ms. Fitz.
Thank you.
So the way that the CDC and we have been doing contact tracing in conjunction with the county Department of Public Health is they're saying that the contact tracing is prolonged contact with a positive case. Now, we know that if there are kids who are sick, we also have a duty to protect their identity. So we can't say, oh, Sandra's the one that got COVID. I'm sure people will figure that out if Sandra is not in class. And so the district stance is, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And if one student gets sick, that doesn't mean that the whole class is going to get sick. So we want to make sure that we're not depriving kids of their education if one person gets sick and they're not even around that student. I don't know why other principals are saying that. I'll have to go back and reiterate that with the principals when we meet with them. We meet with them every Wednesday to talk through any concerns or issues that they may have and answer some of their questions. So I will go back to that group and reiterate that. We would end up closing down the class or quarantining the class when we have multiple cases, or if we know that student that is sick had contact with everybody in the class for long. Let's say they were doing centers and they were doing rotations and every kid saw every other kid within that rotation and they were there for 20 minutes. That's possible. So in that situation, yes, then the whole class would get notified. But again, it just depends on the situation. Now, will a service provider be notified? It's a need to know. So if you need to know, then you will know. If you don't need to know, then you're not going to know. We do also have a duty to protect students and their health record, and as well as if a teacher gets sick, we can't automatically tell the parents that teacher is sick. So we are dealing with some privacy issues as well. So we have to make sure that we are careful with confidentiality. But we want to make sure that you are aware. If we're not going to put your kids at risk just because we don't want to tell anybody. It's a need to know. And we shut down the whole district for almost a year and a half. If we have to do that again to make sure that our kids are staying safe, then we've done it before, we can do it again. But we want to make sure that we can be successful in a in-person environment. We did visit, just for your knowledge, some schools in Corona Norco district, and really very limited safeguards there, and they haven't had any positive cases. They had a positive case of a student who was playing high school athletics, and nobody else got it, and that student got it from a family member that they had visited when they had a party. So we're hoping that we're on the downswing of things, and we can get back to normal as possible. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez.
Okay, we have a student, Lily, is asking a question. Lily, would you like to unmute your mic and ask your question? I think she's asking if we're going back to school this year and that we have to wear masks.
Yes. So we will be expecting all the scholars and staff on campus to wear masks at all times for safety precautions. And we will be returning on June, for those who have registered for summer school, June 7th through the 25th. And then we will return to school in person in August with that expectation. Thank you for your question, Lily.
Those are all the questions that are in the chat.
All right. Well, I want to make sure that we do not take up any more time than needed. I want to thank everyone for your support. Thank you so much, Dr. Rodriguez, for supporting us through our meeting today. It was extremely helpful. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for the technology support, and also Mrs. Rodriguez for supporting with translation. And I want to say
let
also,
me just say this real quick, because we've got Rodriguez. So let's just clear that up. People are like, who's what? So yes, Santos and I are related. He's my brother. No relation to Angelica, who's been your translator today.
thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. So before we close out, I do see that we have a hand raised. Is it Michelle?
Yes. Hi, Michelle Kirkland. I don't know how to lower my hand, so I'll take care of that in a second.
Okay.
This sounds like a total nightmare with the masks and the checking. What happens if he can't hear me? My son Bradley goes to school and will not keep his mask on. Like, that's already giving me anxiety. Just like thinking about like the kids, you know, if you have to constantly warn them, is that going to turn into write-ups and then I got to deal with that later? Or if this is all too much for the kids, will we be allowed to remove them to do the e-learning? Because I'm like, I assume the mask mandate right now is until Gavin Newsom says no more. So are we like hoping by August that this will be no more? Does that make sense?
Yes, that's a great question. First, I want to address your concern as far as students being disciplined or having consequences for not having the mask. We will support the students with reminders and do what needs to be done as far as collaborating with the families to ensure that our students follow the protocol and the expectations. And as mentioned earlier, the guidelines are changing, sometimes daily and rapidly. And so we are planning to keep up with what the expectations are statewide, and as they change, we will inform the parents. So in August, it may be quite different than what we're sharing right now. But as far as summer school, if your scholar will be attending summer school, then this will be the expectation as of right now.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. I'm just like, oh my God, just trying to think of like school drop-off and the temperature checks and trying to start on time, and then, no, make sure you keep your mask. So I'm just like, oh, thank God I live close to town, because if there's a problem, like, I can get there.
Yeah, and as a parent myself, I definitely understand the concerns, because it can be quite cumbersome. But we appreciate your patience and your flexibility and understanding as we transition back. Given that we've been out of school for so long, there's going to be a lot of reminders and reiterating,
I'm sure it's going to be hard for the kids. I'm like, I don't think you get it. And they're like, we're going back to be with our friends. I'm like, you don't get it. Like,
they're more resilient than we think. They'll adjust.
I'm like, you don't like the 2.5 like hours now, so yeah, good luck. Like, and then I'm like, oh, poor teachers. Like, I feel terrible. So
absolutely.
Okay.
I definitely understand. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm like, okay, come on, August. Let's just hope that at least is one thing gone. Like, hopefully.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question in the chat is, will speech therapy be in person in August as well?
Oh, that is a great question. And as of now, yes.
And then there's a question about, how will band be taught?
Oh, that's a good question as well. In summer school, so I can share as it relates to Kimbark. I'm sorry. Once we return in August, there will be protocols and processes as it relates to students who are using the this is bad, but I don't even know all the names of the instruments. I'm sorry, Sid.
I said, let me help you.
Thank you.
There's a quick story with this one. So students who are in band, we have actually bought some masks that have a cutout feature So it's kind of like a flap so they can actually play their instrument if it's something that requires their mouth. And then we also have MRF 13 horn covers.
There you go.
At the end of those types of instruments. The joke was one of our board members asked our coordinator of music, have you tried those? And so he was going to give us a demonstration at one of our board meetings to see how they worked. So that's why I remember that. But the district has bought all that stuff. And then they'll be distributing that to any student that is in a band program that requires it. So like if they're playing the drums or the piano, they may not need that. They'll just need the mask. But the other things, they do have the mask and the MRF cover for the horns.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. Are there any more questions at this time, Ms. Zay?
No more questions.
All right. If a question comes up after this meeting, please feel free to contact the office, or you can text the number that we can provide in the chat again, and we will get back to you with a response.
There's one more question. Do you want it now?
Yes.
Okay, so with the way we have been with COVID and worried about the spread, will children with any symptoms be sent home now versus being allowed to stay if the parent doesn't come to pick them up?
So good question. If we have students who exhibit symptomatic behaviors or fevers or anything such as, we do have care rooms. So our care room will be basically a waiting space for our scholars, for us to monitor them while we're connecting with the parents for pickup. Now, we are not physicians, so we cannot diagnose and say whether or not a scholar has a COVID or not. We contact the parent to let them know of our concerns, and then they pick up their scholar as required. And then we go from there. But if the scholar is not feeling well, they will be isolated in a designated care room.
Will they be required to be tested before they return?
We cannot make that requirement. It kind of aligns to the expectation that we can't expect our families, parents, staff, or students to take the vaccination because that is confidential and we can't require that or request it.
So, but there are guidelines as far as when kids can return. They have to be symptom-free for a certain amount of time. We are looking at, so our schools do have the ability to, we have, it's called Hazel Health. It's kind of an online medical doctor that we can call to see if student can get in to go see a doctor. And then also we're looking into rapid COVID tests to see if those are things that, a parent would be interested in to kind of know right away. And so those are some things that are coming in the future, but as at this point, we're not testing, but that could change.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. Are there any more questions, Mrs. Yates?
There was just one that I answered. What are the maximum number of students per classroom for return in August? Oh, I read that wrong. The first time in August, I thought he was talking about summer. So I said 20, but now we have no more than 16 for summer. What is the max for when we return in August?
The plan for return in August would be the same as it has been in the previous years. So for primary, it's 24. For upper grade, it's 33.
When will we have to decide which method of learning our kids will do?
By May 30th, via parent portal. And so once you go into parent portal, it'll prompt you to choose if you do select to do virtual learning. However, please keep in mind that if you do choose that route, it will not save the space of your scholar at Kimbark. So if you later decide you would like to come back, you would have to go through the regular process to re-register them, and we can't guarantee that there will be space available. And for any families who do not select, it'll automatically default to back to in-person learning. Okay, no more questions at the moment. All right. Well, again, if any questions come up after today's meeting, please feel free to text the number in the chat. Mrs. Yates, can you provide that number again for us?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Or you can contact the office, and we will be sure to get back with you with the details as it relates to your question. Again, I want to thank Dr. Rodriguez, our assistant superintendent, who came out to support us today. Very beneficial, so thank you. Mr. Rodriguez, who's supporting with technology, and Angelica Rodriguez, who has been translating. And also to our teachers and staff who came out to support us this evening. And thank you to our families, because I know it's not easy coming out and listening to a town hall meeting when it's time for dinner in bed. So thank you so much for your time and your commitment to ensuring a safe return. You all have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.